Hey guys, it's Nomus RC. It's been a minute since I've done a video. What we're tearing into today is the Arrma Felony. So here's your standard Felony setup. Your single motor here. We're running a 35 kilogram servo and then 150 amp ESC. This is actually a hobby wing. It's not the default one. The Spectrum one actually crapped out. Not surprised. Those things die all the time. But I do still have a reliable and trusty BLX 185 and a second motor. Yeah. And then I went ahead and purchased the dual motor mount. Alright guys, so we're going to start a build on a dual ESC, dual motor, twin 6S 5000s. I may actually wind up going a little bit lower on the milliamp, we'll see. Maybe wind up going 4000. We'll see. But I'm hoping for a really reliable 100 to 120 mile an hour car. And because it's dual motor, I don't need the e-brake that some people will put on here, because you'll actually have the strength of two motors slowing you down, which should significantly stop you. But yeah, guys, let's get to it. So I have headlights and taillights on this. I had them ran down here. I went ahead and chopped all the zip ties off, took out the two bolts for the center support, the tower to tower brace, pulled the lid off of the receiver box, pulled the servo out. This whole cage here that holds onto your ESC and all that other stuff, it's actually going to get ripped out, and I'm just going to keep the servo mount, and the servo is actually going to, I'm thinking I'm going to put it here. We'll see how that works out. So let's keep going. Let's keep ripping it down. Alright guys, so we got the dual motors mounted up to the dual motor mount. And I also have the center spool installed. It's got a 36 tooth spur, teeny tiny, 28 tooth pinions on the motors. So we'll have the correct ratio so they won't be fighting each other. I did use the Spectrum motors with the fans and heat sinks that they come with. Right? So you can see the orientation in which I installed the motors. It's for a very specific reason, because you have to reroute your servo. So let's move on to that. So on the car, we ripped off the center differential, right? Dismounted the motor, etc. We had this radio box over here that held the ESC, the receiver, and it had its own little mount for the steering servo. And the steering servo was all the way to the inside, which is not going to work at all, because we're going to be mounting the motors right here. So with the motors being mounted right there, obviously you have nowhere to put your servo. So the only logical place that I found for the servo is right here, and it just barely clears this heatsink right here. And I'll show you once we get it all mounted up. I haven't put a third hole over here, but I'm going to now that I have everything back apart again. And then I am countersinking the holes, obviously, so that your screws are flush, you know. So let's get this last hole here, and then we'll go ahead and mount the motors, and then we'll mount the steering servo. Alright, so we'll go ahead and put our rear drive shaft in here. Alright, and it's got these little bearing supports down here. We'll put our front drive shaft in, and then we'll go ahead and finagle the dual motors down in there. I did wind up having to, if you can see there, on the heat sinks, I actually had to grind them down a little bit because the cup was hitting on them. So let me get this slipped in here, and then we'll start mounting the bolts. Alright, we got our 5 bolts started here. We'll go ahead and just tighten them up. Alright guys, we got it all mounted up. So that is good. Now mind you, when you hook these up, you have to reverse one of the motors, right? Because it's on the other side. So let's go ahead and get the servo mounted back on here, and it'll go just like this. Now the servo mount that I used is actually out of a Creighton an Outcast, a Sentin. They all use the same one. Or you could use the upgraded EXB one if you wanted to purchase that. But obviously we had to scrap the original. It only had 2 mount points on the bottom, and we'd have had to cut it all up. So we're scrapped that. All right, let's get this mounted up. We got that third hole put in there, so we have 4 holes for the servo mount. We have all 3 of the ones that we created countersunk, so the screws will be nice and level with the chassis. All right, let's get this servo mounted. All right, so we got the steering servo installed. I did have to put a couple of spacers on the back side of the legs. I can't really see that one. Just to boost the servo up on that side a little bit to give us better clearance right here. And I also shaved a little bit off of this heatsink just to kind of give us, again, extra clearance. But you can see it moves freely. Let's go ahead and start getting some of the other electronics mounted, like the ESCs. This is just the lighting, this wiring. It actually ties to the center tower-to-tower brace. And then this is our fans right here. But the way that I'm going to run this is we will have one ESC right here. Right there. It'll just be secured down to the chassis. The next ESC will be on the exact opposite side. And again, we'll just be secured down to the chassis. And then we'll get all this plugged in, and we'll give it a first test. All right, everything is wired up. Obviously, it looks like a mess. We're just testing. We need to make sure that everything works before we go forward with tidying everything up, obviously. So just one thing to note, again, like I said previously, one of your ESCs is going to be wired normally, blue to blue, yellow, orange, etc. The other one is going to be, you're going to have 2 wires crossed so that the motor is running in a different direction. So as you can see, this is the middle wire coming out of the ESC. Well, it is not going to the middle wire on the motor. It's actually going to this one right here. Now these wires aren't color-coded anymore. I've chopped and done stuff with this ESC before. So if we can see here, the yellow wire, basically, the yellow wire on this one is actually going to orange, and the orange wire is going to the yellow on the motor. So they are backwards. Otherwise your motors are just going to be fighting each other. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see how it goes. So something that you can do just to test everything, just to test the system, is you can just turn on one ESC, right? You can see both of the fans turned on. That fan is not great. It sounds a little bit crazy. Our lighting is on. It actually powers both fans on the ESCs. You can see that our steering is working. And we do have motor. Let's go ahead and shut this one off. And let's turn this one on. And then we'll turn this one back on. And now we have 2 motors and 2 ESCs and 2 6-dose batteries. So you can do a test and just completely disconnect one of these motors, make sure that that ESC is working, and then do it the other way. Plug this motor back in, disconnect that motor, make sure that this motor is moving on its own, just so that you know that you have both motors working. Because otherwise, honestly, there's really no way to tell other than how much power it has. So I'm actually going to move this receiver to in front of here. And we may have to extend some cables, we'll see. And then I can put my center brace back on, and then we'll tidy up all the wiring, and this thing should be set to do a test run. Alright guys, there we go. She is finished. Got the wiring all complete. The car is built. She's ready to rock. Check it out. So we got the 2 motors, 2 fans, 2 ESCs, 2 6S batteries, so 12S total. 12S RC car, I've never had that. Pretty ridiculous. And again, we got our servo is mounted. Servo is mounted right over here. We got plenty of clearance right here from the motor heat sink. And everything's ready to rock, guys. It turned out really, really nice. The way that I had to run the wiring for the ESCs right here actually worked out really good because it looks nice and it still allows for my active air intake to have clearance and shoot air right on the motor and ESCs. So it literally shoots air directly onto this motor and ESC and directly onto this motor and ESC. So you almost wouldn't even need cooling fans, to be honest. I will be getting a different cooling fan for here because one of the blades is broke and it doesn't have a shroud, so I'll replace that eventually. But for now, it's built, it's good. We mounted the switch for this ESC right here, the switch for the other ESC down here. All right. Got our lighting kit is still operational. We haven't completely smashed that yet. I did off of the, let me turn this around for you guys. Off of the old radio box where it held the receiver and all that stuff, I chopped this piece off and then just stuck it down here so that I would have something for antenna. Because yes, you can tuck your antennas away, guys, but if you're going to be doing anything long range, you need an antenna sticking up. So I wanted to go ahead and reuse the existing ones because I like them. You push your antenna tube in there and then it has a little, hex grub screw that holds it. But yeah, guys, that is it. Let's pop the body on. All right, there we go. Body's mounted. She's looking freaking fit. Awesome. Looking gorgeous. Nice custom Felony wing on there with the skull. And then underneath, we got this crazy beast. Dual motor, dual ESC, lighting kit, dual fans, 12S, 2 6S batteries. Crazy, 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 guys. Beautiful. The very next video will be a running video, and I'm very, very happy with this build, guys. As always.